Good afternoon and welcome to this session on researching in Leicestershire and Rutland. We have a number of speakers for you this afternoon, so I will go through them briefly for you, hopefully in the order, I think it's in the right order for the presentations. Elsa Churchill is the genealogist at the Society of Genealogists. Sue Lester is the publicity officer for the Leicestershire and Rutland Family History Society. Laura Taylor is archivist at the Record Office for Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland. Rosie Sweet is Professor of Urban History at the University of Leicester. And Dr. Paula Orcott is Senior Research Associate at the University of Portsmouth and contributor to A Vision of Britain Through Time. Our first speaker is Elsa, so would you like to put up your slideshow, Elsa, which we possibly should have done before I did the introductions?
Okay.
So over to you, Elsa.
Well, welcome everyone to this collaboration from the Society of Genealogists, Leicestershire and Rutland Family History Society, and the Record Office for Leicestershire and Rutland, and other organisations who are all here to help you learn about family history resources for the counties of Leicestershire and Rutland. It's my opportunity to kick off first and tell you about what we have at the Society of Genealogists in London. The Society seeks to create a working genealogical research hub concentrating on collecting resources relating on not only how you do your genealogy with, of course, textbooks, guides, journals, periodicals, and a very thriving education programme, but also we focus our collections within the library and archives on what your ancestors did in their lives, collecting occupational records, anything about education, apprenticeship, military service, tax records, criminal records, newspapers, trade directories, ecclesiastical licenses, church records, church court records, tombstones, etc., etc., etc. We particularly focus on what's been done before, collecting compiled family histories and pedigrees and genealogy research notes and papers, published and unpublished. And we also like to really concentrate on the resources, which is the focus of this series, on resources for where your ancestors lived. The Society collects material for the UK and overseas genealogy, including indexing, finding aids, copies and transcripts of vital records such as birth, marriage and deaths, church baptisms, marriages and burials, census directories, and lots of other local records of assistance to genealogists. In assistance to print, micromedia and digital items, we also have manuscript topographical papers, and all of this I'm trying to cram in to the next 20 minutes or so. I think I've only got about 20 minutes, so well, obviously please feel free to put questions in the chat, and I am really going to have to go through quite quickly to see what we have. We have library books, electronic media, and micromedia, both on and off the shelves at our library in Wharf Road, which means it is really essential to get to know our catalogues. That's what we call SOGCAT, SOGCAT, which you can access through the website. And of course, you can find out and access things through what we give access to as being an affiliate partner with Family Search. So you can use the Family Search catalogue to see what's available to view at Wharf Road as well. In addition to those, we have our archives, which contain manuscripts, documents, research papers, notes, our special collections and pedigrees, all of which is housed off-site, and therefore you would need to use the PDF lists of what we call our archive finding aids, which are available through the library pages of our website. Some of our collections have been digitized and made available for members to view, which means you would use our platform SOG Explore, where you'll find indexed original records, indexes to records without images and with images, databases, and of course many digitized books from the collection. And all that is you'll find in the library information pages of the website, which tells you how you can visit the library, how you can book a place, how you can use the catalogues to establish what we have, and then to order the item in if it's not housed in Wharf Road, but rather at our off-site storage. So for a typical county collection, we'll have what we call general items. Those might be county histories for the county, compiled county pedigrees for the families in that county, anything that covers the whole county, such as an index to, maybe for example, the hearth tax or will indexes, finding aids to local records. Those are what we call general items, and those tend to be on the shelves on the county shelves. You'll find local items for specific places within the county, such as local parish histories, parish chest records, rate books, borough freemen, local quarter sessions, anything for a place that's not a church record. And for Leicestershire, for example, the catalogue lists 308 items and Rutland 57 local items, and those are mostly on the shelves at Wharf Road. Church registers will include copies, transcripts, indexes and finding aids. And for Leicestershire, there's 884 parish items for registers for places in Leicestershire and 233 Rutland register items listed in the catalogues. And those transcripts, which are identified in the catalogue as being bound and in book form, are now scanned, not on the open shelves, in order to save a bit of room at Wharf Road, but you can order them as digital PDFs of those books to view at Wharf Road, and eventually we hope they will be online. The registers can also include nonconformist material and other denominations. Again, there's a number of collected transcribed monumental inscriptions, transcribed in index from local churchyards and cemeteries, and there are 289 catalogue entries for Leicestershire places and only 6 for Rutland, surprisingly, in the catalogue. And again, those transcripts which are identified as being in book form, I'm afraid, are not on the open shelves, but have all been scanned and again can be viewed as digital copies of the scanned book at Wharf Road. We have directories, and there's some 48 listed in the catalogue for Rutland, for Leicestershire, and 35 for Rutland, and poll books of similar numbers. These again are off-site, though a number might be digitised, and the catalogue will tell you those, and along with family history periodicals and local society record series, etc. So with so much information not on the open shelves and you having to order things in, it is vital to use the catalogues to identify what you want, and you can find the catalogues on the library research hub pages of our website, where there is a simple pathway to the library catalogue where you can put in just a place or a surname, for example, as a starting place to see what we have for the places that you're interested in, or you can take the direct link to the library catalogue to do more sophisticated, advanced and keyword searches. So you've got plenty of ways of trying to see what we have for the things you're interested in. Of course, as most genealogists know, that sources are most associated with localities and places. It's a great way just to put in the name of a place that you're interested in. So here, for example, I've searched the library catalogue by place, seeing what we have for Ashby-de-la-Zouch, and you see that we have 26 distinct items listed in the catalogue for this parish, including local records, as I said, parish chests, maps, local histories, guides, a history of the local grammar school, for example, significant number of church registers, copies of original registers, transcripts and indexes, not only for the Church of England parish, but various nonconformist chapels as well. The parish is covered by Boyd's marriage index and the Leicestershire indexes, and I'll come to that as well. Lots of monumental inscriptions, census indexes compiled by the local Family History Society, probably a bit superseded by what you'll find online on the major genealogy websites, but nevertheless, local knowledge can be quite useful. Things like the Kirkland papers, 1753 to 1869, the Ferrers murders and life and times of a medical family in Ashby-de-la-Zouch, or reports of the manuscripts of the late Reginald Rawdon Hastings, Esquire of the Manor House of Ashby-de-la-Zouch. So the holdings for a particular place can be quite varied. So if you just look up to see what we have, and you'll find listings. So here, for example, some of the 16 items for the parish of Corndon will be listed. Similar listings as I've got for Ashby-de-la-Zouch or for Empingham in Rutland, for example. So start with the place and see what we have. To say there is considerable amount of local history material, as well as transcripts and copies of records. We do try to ensure that there's a broader spread of anything that's been published, or facsimiles of records of use for the genealogist searching by place. But you can, of course, broaden out your search to cover things in the general items that cover the whole county, and you can start browsing some of the subject headings for Leicestershire, particularly Leicestershire General, from almanacs through to wills, and sort of an A to Z listing of subjects. So, for example, for Leicestershire General family history, there are something like 57 items, usually compiled family histories for the county, reference books as well. So anything like the family histories noted in Nicholls' History and Antiquity of Leicestershire. And of course, we've got the Victoria County Histories of Rutland, etc. It was all the local general history things you'd expect us to have. So on Leicestershire General Family Histories, some of the older antiquarian compilations of pedigrees of Leicestershire families, compiled by notable genealogists such as George Francis Farnham, William George de Fletcher, and W.G. Hoskins, the medieval pedigrees, the Lincolnshire pedigrees and families of royal descents, or Leicestershire yeoman families and their pedigrees. You'd expect us to have those reference books in the Society's library. J.B. Whitmore's bibliography, a genealogical guide, indicates it's a pedigree relating to the family of Moton in Leicestershire. In Leicestershire pedigrees, i.e. the Leicestershire medieval pedigrees, compiled by George Francis Farnham, and of course we have a copy of those and that pedigree in the general section of the books in the library. George Marshall's genealogy guides also suggest there are other pedigrees for the family of Moton in Burton's description of Leicestershire, which unfortunately we don't have a copy of that. And of course he indicates there's a pedigree of that for that family in Nicholls' History of Leicestershire, which of course we do. You can find, I'm going to digress slightly, but you can see that we do have some reference to the Leicestershire family of Moton in some of our online provisions. Obviously you can look at the bibliographic guide of the George Marshall's Genealogist Guide online, but the name Moton crops up in some of our digitized databases from the library as well. So for example, that we've indexed and digitized our collection of manuscript pedigrees, known as what we call the roll pedigree, some of which are enormous. And again, you'll see references to the name from Moton, this Leicestershire family, appearing in that. And if I blow it up a bit, you can see that the roll pedigree of the ancestry of Sir Van Sittart Bowater, Baronet, shows Mary, the daughter of Robert Moton of Peckleton, married Thomas Beaumont of Thringstone in Leicestershire, and their son Thomas Beaumont. So a pedigree taking that family back to the 16th century, with their son dying in 1531. And again, here's a reference again to Elizabeth Moton, the daughter of Robert Moton of Pickleton in Leicestershire. She's the mother of Sir James Harrington, and he appears in a compiled little potted family tree narrative of the family of Sir James Harrington. So we are starting to index in quite depth some of the unique manuscript pedigrees which we have lodged in the Society. Yes, I think they show quite often they are of earlier landed families, but not exclusively so. I mentioned that Leicestershire parishes were covered in Boyd's Marriage Index. That includes about 140 Leicestershire parishes, about 51% of the county, but mainly for the early period, for 1651 to 1675 and 1701 to 1725, all from Boyd's Miscellaneous series. And there are only about 23 parishes from Rutland, but still about 38% of the county are covered by Boyd's Marriage Index. Both of these, again, are indexed online through our digital platform SOG Explore. We do, of course, have some of the published marriage indexes, such as those published by Leicestershire and Rutland Family History Society. And of course, we have copies of Quaker Digests, extracting records from Friend's House for Quaker records for the counties of Leicestershire and Rutland, and those other circuits which sort of cover bits of the counties. Pre-1858 wills for both counties can be a bit complicated, and the Society is a good place to start. The Archdeaconry Court of Leicestershire fell in the Diocese of Lincoln, and we have the published indexes for those up to about 1750 for the Archdeaconry, along with some peculiars. Rutland fell in the Northamptonshire diocese, and within the Diocese of Peterborough. And again, in addition to all the published finding aids, copies and the records which have been digitised by Family Search, we will have, of course, accessible in the library, and of course, all those indexed and digitised by Find My Past in partnership with the local record office are accessible through the library at the Society. The counties are well served by very active and flourishing local records and family history societies. So our periodicals include things like the East Midland Ancestor, Leicestershire and Rutland Family History Society journals, the Leicester University Department of Local History occasional papers, the Leicester Historian, even earlier ones such as the Leicestershire and Rutland Notes and Queries, the Rutland Record, or the Rutland Magazine and County Historical Societies. So quite a good run of periodicals within the library for the counties. Often books listed in the SOG library catalogue SOGCAT indicate that the item has been scanned and digitised and made available on SOG Explore for our members. And again, so if the catalogue says here, like for example, the History Gazetteer and Directory for the counties for 1863 are on SOG Data Online, you can find them on that's now our SOG Explore platform. So that allows us to publish indexes of records, including a few transcripts of registers, monumental inscriptions, Boyd's Marriage Index, for example, and lots of digitised items from our library, such as directories, poll books, scanned local histories, etc. And you can identify items using the A to Z listing to narrow down to a particular data set or individual book that you're looking for. So there, for example, you can find the Leicestershire and Rutland Gazetteer and Directory that's been digitised, and again you can browse through that by clicking on the images there. Occasionally some of the digitised books may well have been indexed as well, such as the poll books, so you might be able to search SOG Explore for the names within the book, as well as just browsing through it to read it. So moving from the books or the digital items, let's look to our manuscript archives just to finish up. Here, for example, we have the listings from our collection of what we call the topographical place papers. Ooh, and by topographical, we mean pertaining to or dealing with a place rather than the name ID from the word topography, which the OED defines as the science or describing for a particular place, city, town, manor, parish, tract of land, etc. So we've come across these topographical listings pretty much by happenstance. Sometimes they've come through family papers. They may have been through donations or clearances from solicitors' deed boxes via the British Record Association, which acts as a clearinghouse for such deposits. So these could be scanned copies of original, these could be transcriptions of original documents, or often the original documents themselves. So we've divided them up box by box, and for some reason or other I didn't put Leicestershire there. But there's normally a box or a series of boxes for each county, and we have a what we call a paper list for each county topographical box, which you can access through the archive finding aids link on our library page of our website. So, for example, if you click from the archive finding aids to the folder marked topographical collections, it'll open up the lists for the particular county you want. And there's some of the listings for the Leicestershire collection, arranged parish by parish within the county. They're very much miscellaneous. Have come to us really because through more by chance than anything else. And but sometimes there are some really interesting items in there, like for example 3 copies of the lists for children who attended the Sunday school at the parish of Kilmcott and Kimcott and Walton, the Sunday school maintained by the local Lord of the Manor, and I suspect that's come from family papers from that family, to be perfectly honest, but a lovely name-rich original set of records for the children being marking their attendance at the Sunday school, and how much the schoolmaster acquired or was paid for for looking after those children on each Sunday. I think it works out as a halfpence per child. As I said, also, Society of Genealogists is an affiliate partner working with Family Search, which means the Family Search catalogue will allow you to search and see what records have been digitised, and often those can be viewed at the Society of Genealogists library. Of course, we have access to the major genealogy subscription websites, such as Ancestry, Find My Past, and the Genealogist, etc., all of which can be viewed in the library. So I hope that's given a general overview of what we have in the collections. We will, of course, be having an opportunity for you to come to the Society to view a recording of this event, for those who didn't have to manage to catch it on live on stream, and also take a tour of the Society's library with our library team, who will show you some of the items I've described today, show you how you can find the items we have for researching the counties, and to answer any questions, and of course network and meet other people researching in the same area. So I hope we see you at the Society on Wednesday as an opportunity to come in for our open day. Thank you very much. I'll stop sharing my screen there.
Right, thank you very much. I recognise some names of attendees as members of the Society who know me already, but for others, my name's Sue Leicester. I'm the Publicity Officer. Despite my surname being Leicester, my ancestors aren't actually from Leicester, but by the by. Okay, so I'm sure everyone attending knows exactly where Leicestershire and Rutland are. The reason I've put these two maps on are to show that both counties, particularly Leicestershire, has a number of other counties very near by. And I'd already noticed a question about boundary changes and parish changes. So just to emphasise that if you're struggling to find records for your Leicestershire ancestors, it's always worth looking in these surrounding counties, particularly as Leicestershire itself has 6 bordering counties. Okay, now over the years that the Society has been in operation, volunteers, like with a lot of family history societies, have transcribed numerous parish records across the county. And obviously, a few years ago, Find My Past bought up a lot or digitalized a lot of those records. So we do still sell the original data either via download by memory stick or CD. And all the details of a lot of the things I'm talking about today, including CD numbers, etc., and costs, are in the handout, which I understand will be emailed out tomorrow. So obviously don't worry too much about noting down particular details. So the ones I want to talk about are things that might be online, but particularly might be useful even if you do subscribe to Find My Past. As you're probably aware, the records for Leicestershire and Rutland are on Find My Past rather than on Ancestry. So the first thing I want to mention is a compilation of 11 CDs covering 36 Leicester churches. And obviously, although these are on Find My Past as well, if your family is actually largely from Leicester Borough, you are actually going to be able to look quite easily at a number of parishes and research your family in that way. Also, marriages, we've got a Leicester Borough Marriage Index over a period of 8 years. The reason I'm particularly mentioning this is that this includes a church finder. Now, that means that if you've got the GRO volume number and page, you can actually find out which particular church it was where the marriage took place. And that can be particularly useful if you're, whoops. What have I clicked? Sorry, what have I clicked on here?
Looks all right to us.
Oh, not to me. Sorry, something popped up from the...
Yeah, we're seeing marriages in Leicester.
Oh, are you? Oh, okay. I'm not. Whoops. Sorry, the Society of Genealogists thing just popped up on the screen. Why is that? Right. Okay. Is that okay now?
Yeah.
Well, we're still seeing marriages in Leicester.
It's perfect for us.
That's fine. Thank you. Sorry, something popped up and I went off the screen. Okay, in the county then, we've just completed a Northern Leicester County Registration District Marriage Index. And this covers a number of different registration districts. And again, it's got a church finder. Now, a registration district, for instance, like Ashby, has got about 50 parishes in that area. So if you wanted specifically to work out which village, which parish your ancestor married in, this could actually be quite a godsend. And it also includes non-conformist marriages, which, as I understand, aren't available on Find My Past. Moving on to burials, Find My Past have got this data online, but we sell a bargain CD. I think it's £2. So if you want to look in a slightly different way and maybe organise family groups, do a big surname search, that might be something of interest, particularly. Until recently, burials in Leicester City were solely really with us and the Record Office. They are now on Deceased Online. However, obviously you have to get credits to look at that. It's a compilation of the 4 main Leicester cemeteries, covering from the time Welford Road started in 1849 right up to the year 2000. So again, that's something that might be useful to some of you if you're looking particularly at burials in the city of Leicester itself. And alongside the CD data, you also get a map of the cemetery and also a very detailed map of every consecrated sections, etc. Then recently we've also put together cremations at Gilrose. So if you're struggling to find a burial in Leicester City, it's possible that looking for a cremation might be useful. Then moving on to something which I know is exclusive to us, quite exciting. We've recently transcribed a burials account book for the local undertakers Gins and Gutteridge. And it's over a 20-year period. And it includes information that the undertakers noted down for every burial. So, for instance, Arthur Wallace Grimmett, who was 29, he has a funeral that was one of the most expensive funerals in 1929, costing £37. Some are much more detailed than others, but for instance, it tells you how many coaches were involved in this particular one, that there was an oak coffin, he had the best fittings, it tells you he was being transported from the isolation hospital to Catherine Street. So it gives you a few other bits of information. They're not all as detailed as that, but we are always happy to do a search. This isn't online. It is on a CD, but we're always happy to do searches for things like this if you think your family member might feature in something like that. And that's the way that the information appears on the CD, with obviously names, ages, date of burial, and a few other details. So with Rutland parish registers, we've compiled 6 previous CDs, so that rather than having to buy the CDs individually, the whole lot of our Rutland parish baptisms, marriages and burials are all on this particular CD. In terms of monumental inscriptions, like a lot of societies, we have indexed those, cover a wide number of years, a large number of entries. And again, happy to search if you find a family member who might feature in the index. We have got some of the actual details at our centre, some are at the record office. If we've got them, again, we're happy to look up and give you further details. An example, sorry about the creased cheek, by the way, wasn't a very good example. If you've got a family member, for instance, from Ravenstone, and they were called Cresswell, well, there were about 12 burials for the Cresswells in Ravenstone. So it would be a good way to build up a little picture of family members, etc., by looking at that information. Then moving on to wills, over a period of time, one of our members who you might know of, Mick Rawle, has worked at the Leicestershire Record Office. He's also gone to, as we were saying earlier, local record offices, Lincoln and Northampton, producing an index for wills. And some people have told us that actually his index is better than the one online, but we quite like that little recommendation. He's actually now working on some other indexes, I understand, but he's a local historian and he was president of our society. So moving on to some other slightly different records, school records. We've got a useful index of Leicester and Rutland school teachers up to the year 1900. Now, these have been taken from trade directories and other local resources, and it tells you the name of the teacher and what school, the type of school where they were working. It's not on a CD, but we're happy to look up inquiries if anyone wanted to ask about that. And then two records that we're also quite pleased that we've got and aren't yet online anywhere are some school records. Now, these are records for city schools over a period of 1878 to 1923. And some of the early records include a name, an age, a date of birth, an address. The later records include the name of the school as well. So the kind of information that you might get on the exemption register would be this. So for instance, if we look at on number 39, William Blood, we can find he lived at Brandon Street, he was age 12 and he went to Catherine Street School. It's interesting to see the list of schools. Some of them are still in existence. Some of them obviously have closed. Some have been demolished, etc. Moving on to the county, some school records are available through local history books, and we've got a collection of those. I happened to be looking at a book on Moira not long ago and found some amazing school photographs. The quality of the photographs is, for 1927, outstanding. And of course, what's the really impressive thing is it gives the names of the children. And there are several photos in this book about children who were at Moira School. And the photos are, I don't know whether they've been digitally enhanced, but they're all really good quality. And another really good school resource is this book, which goes through lots of villages in Rutland, the same kind of idea of photograph of children, and also a lot of them are named. We're happy to do lookups for that, provided you know what village that your family might have lived in. Obviously, there's quite a lot of villages involved. I don't know whether this book is still available to buy. I did see that a copy on Amazon secondhand was £48. And I think it's an example of how local history groups produced various books and they were sold at the time to local people, and they're probably sort of languishing on bookshelves, etc., charity shops. But they're a great archive if you can get hold of them, because, you know, once it's disappeared, it could be lost. So on then to military resources. We've got quite a few military indexes. We've also got, obviously, quite a lot of books about the Leicestershire Regiment. Very useful. These are obviously at our research centre in Leicester. But some of the indexes we've got, one of our volunteers, two of our volunteers indexed World War I photographs. There are 9,000 names featuring in that. Now, obviously, you can search for the news. This is an index, so you've got to go back to the original newspaper. But I think we all know that sometimes the way that they've been digitalized, you don't necessarily always get the name if you search. So this could be a useful addition to research for World War I family members. We've also got one or two other indexes. Again, they're all listed in the handout, so I'm not going to go through each particular one, but there are several that you might be interested in looking at. And the absent voters list is another one. I find ours is easier to search than the one online because you can search by a name and a street. The one online is slightly more complicated. I spent a long time trying to find absent voters from a place called Oadby in Leicestershire, and I've struggled to find the people I want. So also with the Second World War, a few resources for that. Again, we've transcribed some events from the Illustrated Leicester Chronicle. It gives names of people. It gives details like awarded the military medal. Sergeant Acton was in Cape Town. You know, if you were trying to track somebody like that, that might be quite useful. Again, obviously, you have to go back to the actual original to find the specific article, but sometimes just an index might tell you what you need to know. And then also we've done the absent voters lists for the Second World War, which I don't believe is online, and which we've been really usefully using last week when we were doing some work for VE Day. And quite a recent resource that we've put together, we found on our bookshelves Wiggiston Girls Grammar School Old Girls War Work Record, where ex-students have obviously sent in what they were doing during the Second World War. And we've recently transcribed all the details on that. So, for instance, Gladys Kirby, well, she was very busy. She was receiving evacuees, she was harvesting, she was building camouflage nets, and she was keeping goats. But it is very, very interesting in what the ex-pupils were doing. And again, we're happy to search that for members if they feel that they might have had a family member who went to that particular school. I've listed other indexes pre-1837 in the handout, so I'm not going to read through those because they are all on CD or download and available in that way. And the same with some post-1930 resources, which can fill that, you know, that difficult gap between 1921 census and the 1939 register. A little bit about the world of work. Framework knitters, we've recorded the names of the people who were involved in the 1819 Framework Knitters petition, and also the inquiry in 1845, the witnesses, which makes very interesting reading, giving names and details, etc. from that. It's not on a CD, but we are happy to look up if you feel you might have a family member. And I don't know what proportion of Leicestershire was involved in Framework Knitters, but it was quite a large percentage. And I'm sure that a lot of people will have Framework Knitters in their ancestry. That's an example of what the 1819 index looks like. And then we've also got an apprentices index. Again, that covers quite a wide span of years, 8,000 records in that. And another database is some very interesting information about Leicester City Transport, including some information about their pension scheme. Now, although that started in 1924, some of the people working in 1924 had actually joined during the First World War. So it's quite a broad span of ages and information. So on to a little bit about the society. We have got a research centre in every street in Leicester. It's in the building with the sun shining on it, right in the centre of Leicester. And that's the view from the window. In fact, some people only come to look out of the window and they don't get very much research done. It is a very good location. So what have we got at the library? Well, we've obviously got Find My Past, we've got Ancestry, we've got the British Newspaper Archive. And I would emphasise that you don't have to have ancestors from Leicester and Leicestershire to benefit from joining, because obviously you can use those websites for free if you visit. So there is a list of our books on our website, but just to give you a very quick flavour, obviously the history of Leicester, a more recent history of Leicester, Leicester Streets, the book on slums is particularly interesting if you've got family who lived in houses since demolished. We've got an index to page numbers and streets for that. Leicester Churches, again, some of these books no longer in print, so particularly useful. Leicester Industries, you know, if you've got a clockmaker ancestor, he might feature in the book about Leicestershire and Rutland clockmakers, or some of these other pieces. And then we've got collections on local towns. We've got an awful lot on Loughborough. We've got quite a few on Lutterworth, and then various villages. We've got a large number on villages. So it's a matter of, you know, finding out if you can, well, what have you got on this particular village? I mean, somebody came in and said, oh, I don't believe this. I found a photograph of my grandmother. I've never seen it before. And it's that kind of hidden history that makes us quite proud of our collection of village books. Things like Leicestershire workhouses and books on Rutland. So very, very briefly, and I'm not going to talk about this, but in the handout, I have also mentioned Leicester University Special Collections, which has got resources online which are well worth looking at. So I would direct you to that very definitely. So very briefly about the society. Like a lot of societies, we were formed in the 1970s. We've had our 50th anniversary. If you wonder why we've got a picture of Shawaddy on our journal, that's because they also were 50, celebrating 50 years last year. Lots of membership benefits, of course, they're all listed there, so I'm not going to talk through those, but we like to think that there's benefits if you live locally, if you live within the county, if you live further afield in Britain, or if you live overseas. And if you're interested in joining, there's some information there. As a special offer, anyone who's not a member but would like to join as a result of this, we're offering a free 90 minutes search over the course of the year. So if you have got inquiries and you would like to join and send us your inquiries, then please do so, because we are happy to use our resources for people, particularly who live out of county. If you are interested in receiving a copy of our June journal, we're actually compiling a list of post-out journals. They're not PDFs, they're posted out. If you can get an address to me by tomorrow evening, we'll post you for free a copy of our next journal. So my email, publicity@lrfhs.org.uk, is on the handout. But do take advantage of that, because you can really see what our journal is like and what's going on. I will just add that our website is currently being revamped. So if you look at the website and think not much is happening, then that's the reason. So it's not totally up to date, but we are in the process of looking into that and doing a new website. So if you want to find out more, happy to send you various bits of information. I've mentioned all those things already. So thank you very much for listening today. Hopefully some of that is of interest and of use. And as I say, very happy to answer any questions by email if you don't want to ask in the chat today. So thank you very much.
And the floor is now yours, Laura.
Thank you very much. My name's Laura Taylor and I'm the Senior Archivist at the Record Office for Leicestershire, Leicester and Rutland. If you're an experienced genealogist and you move around the country, you might recognise me from London. I was previously at London Metropolitan Archives, so you're not seeing things. Okay. The move to digitise popular genealogy sources is a godsend for those who can't travel, can't access a record office or other services during office hours due to work or caring responsibilities, and of course during the recent pandemic. As previously mentioned, the Leicestershire and Rutland genealogy sources have been digitised and put on Find My Past. Other record offices have chosen to go with Ancestry, and some haven't gone down this route at all. Also digitised are images from the Thomas Cook collection held at the Record Office, and they're on websites called DC Thomas and the Mary Evans Picture Library. The Railway Archive website, which is connected to the Record Office website, is also very popular. Free access to these sources and the British Library newspaper archive, etc., is available in Search Room 1 at the Record Office. So, what are the limitations of only searching online? Well, only 10% of any Record Office's holdings are currently digitised and online. Obviously, not all of Record Office's holdings are of use to the genealogist. Some of them relate to non-family or personal name-related history. But the online collections on Find My Past and Ancestry stop at approximately 1915. This is for data protection, but other reasons as well. So, for 20th century sources, they are still in the original format or on indexes at the Society of Genealogists. They're not on Find My Past. With Find My Past, records aren't updated annually because those companies like to digitize huge swathes of records rather than do it a bit at the time. And also arranging and supervising this is quite time consuming for a record office, not to mention negotiating contracts with a company and the legal departments of 3 councils, because we do represent the city and the Leicestershire County Council and Rutland. So just for Deborah, the Record Office is the registered place of deposit. Therefore, diocesan records are given to the Record Office when churches are ready to part with them. And last month, the Record Office in Wigston took in the first deposit relating to Castle Donington. So that's St Edward King and Martyr Church. The earliest register is a composite register from 1539. The marriage registers go up to 2017, the baptisms to 1972, and the burials to January 1973. There are various other records in this deposit, including registers of services, accounts, minute books, and also some rather nice other information such as a book of homilies, which is dated to 1665 and has sermons on topics such as against the fear of death, falling from God, and against willful rebellion, for those who are interested in social history as well as genealogy. As this collection is a new deposit, it hasn't been indexed, it hasn't been microfilmed, and it isn't on Find My Past. So currently the only way to view it is to visit the Record Office. That will change over time, but if you want access to that information soon, you can visit. It's also, I'd like to point out that we do take in regular deposits. So if you've asked in the past if we have a register of a certain church and we didn't have it, I would ask again, because new records do come in all the time. So you might want to drop us an email. I don't think I changed the slides. There we go. This is search room 2. This is the room at the record office where readers see original documents. The record office is free entry. You need an archives card, but there isn't a charge for that. It's for document security purposes, really, and the recording of statistics. So that's the room the public look at the originals in. And that brings me on to another another sort of section of records held at the record office. The further we go back, the larger the percentage of the population lives in more rural areas. At the record office, we hold many landed estate collections, including the Herrick family of Bow Manor Hall. The Herricks owned land and property in Barndon Park, Barrow upon Soar, the Manor of Bow Manor Park and Woods, Garrington, Loughborough, Montsorrel, Woodhouse Eaves, Woodhouse, a few other towns in North Leicestershire, as well as records from outside this county, from Hertfordshire, Staffordshire and Monmouthshire. That's quite common for estate collections because many families owned properties outside their area. And as different marriages happened, collections from other parts of the country merged in one site. Estate collections contain many sources of use to the genealogist as they record the names of locals connected to the manor. There was a question in the chat about this. Records include surveys and terriers, which describe the land and often the references the tenants, but also there are estate ledgers and other account books which will often contain personal names. There can also be surprises that you wouldn't expect to find, such as in the aforementioned Herrick collection, where there are biographies of boys sent from Leicestershire to the orphan asylum in Wolverhampton under the auspices of Mary Ann Herrick. Mary Ann was a key member of and a benefactor to that orphanage. There is an index to those personal names in a typed collection summary in the public rooms. The image on the slide is from the Herrick collection and it is a customal, and it shows that once you've exhausted the more popular genealogy sources online, there are often other records that will assist you. This document includes the names of tenants and also their signatures and sometimes an X where those tenants couldn't write their names. And I think for a descendant of those tenants, it's a really exciting find because you don't often see the signatures of your ancestors. It's also, I think, quite nice to get to view an original document and to work with the originals occasionally. There is a summary of all the estate collections held in the search room 2 at the record office, but there's also some information on the online catalogue. That's descriptions of the records, but not the records themselves because they haven't been digitised. For Rutland, a great estate collection in both sense of the word is the Exton collection, which has a wealth of information on that county and also notably the western side of Leicestershire and other parts of the country. The majority of the collection is under reference DE 3214, and I'd like to highlight just 2 examples from it. In the collection, there is a list of Exton Hall estate servants, both male and female, giving annual wages and occupations. That runs from 1751 to 1772. There's also a labour book called Labour Book A for the park and garden work, listing labourers' work and wages from 1829 to 1830. So that's just two examples from that huge collection. That collection can't be copied in any way without the permission of the depositors, but it can be viewed. It is available to researchers without an appointment. Also worth mentioning in the estate collections are the records related to enslaved persons from plantations, which are often in the Caribbean but can be elsewhere. And they do sometimes, but sadly not always, contain the personal names of those people. So, with over 9 kilometres of strong rooms and records dating back to 1107, what else is there that might assist the genealogist? Well, there are the quarter session records, and they survive for Leicestershire from 1896, from the Borough, which is the city of Leicester, from 1847, and from Rutland from 1743. These record the work done by the justices of the peace at their sessions, mostly the administration of the counties, but also some criminal cases. In some cases, the verdict of the court are alongside the descriptions of the case. There are also quarter session rolls, which are the original documents from each session, so what you'd call supporting papers these days. They don't include the verdict of trials, but they do include information such as the calendar of prisoners, which is the list of those in jail awaiting trial. And they, for the city, they go back to 1606, and for Leicestershire from 1714. That's just a snapshot of court records held at the Record Office. Other court records, such as the ecclesiastical courts before 1858, are at the National Archives in Kew, but do look at the website if that is what you require. Taxation records, as previously mentioned, are a useful source for the genealogist, some of which have indexes, some of which don't. They can include window, hearth, and wig taxes. The poll books were established by Acts of Parliament in 1696 and 1711. Manuscript poll books were delivered by the Sheriff of the Clerk of the Peace for preservation amongst the quarter session records. The 1872 Ballot Act introduced the secret ballot. Prior to this, printed poll books were produced by commercial printers for profit and record the voter's name and candidates voted for, and some other information such as address, occupation, and qualification. The earliest surviving records held at the Record Office in Wigston for Rutland date from 1710, for Leicestershire 1715, and for the city 1754. We all know the limitations of being able to vote, that it was originally only property owners and those and men that could vote, but after that, when that series ends, the Record Office does hold electoral registers, and they begin to be created after 1832 with the Representation of the People Act. The electoral registers include the name of the person entitled to a vote, address, qualification, liability for jury service, etc., etc. Unfortunately, we only have them from Rutland from 1973. Previous to that, they are at Lincolnshire Record Office. And these are on the open access shelves in Search Room 1. As you would expect, there are workhouse records, so those who were claiming poor relief, but I'm not going to talk about them at length today, and sadly we don't hold any for Rutland, but they are there and they do contain a lot of useful information, and there are indexes. I'm sure there are a few CDs at the Society of Genealogists as well as at the Record Office, but they include admission and discharge to the workhouses, creed registers, births and deaths therein, and some registers of apprenticeships, apprentices and emigrants. And also before the NHS, many people chose to have their children in workhouse infirmaries due to the absence of proper maternity provision at that time. So there is also, and I'm conscious that I'm probably going over time now, but there's also thousands of maps at the Record Office. There are enclosure awards and enclosure maps. There are the earliest maps for the counties. There's a copy of Ordnance Survey maps. There are tithe maps. There are various indexes to those in place in Search Room 1. And the staff will assist you in finding what you need, in helping you locate the maps that may be of use to you. Okay, so this is Search Room 1. This is kind of the reference area. If Search Room 2 is where you look at the originals, Search Room 1 is where you look at the secondary sources, the microfilms, use the computers to look at Find My Past, etc., electoral registers, yellow pages, and some of the local studies library is on the open access shelves. Also, just to mention, I know that the British Library newspaper library have put many newspaper sources online, but it's not a complete picture. Some of the local titles aren't available on that website, and you may want to visit or send an email in if you want to look at newspapers for particular towns or areas of the city and 2 counties. So what else do we have? Well, there's a local studies library. There's also an ephemera collection, which includes information on most topics. There are parish magazines that list the social life of churches and can give context to some sort of an additional family information. And also, I don't think I've mentioned the many business and association records that are held at the Record Office. So Thomas Cook's quite a famous collection that we took in a few years ago. There are staff magazines for Thomas Cook dating back to the early 20th century. If you had an ancestor working for Thomas Cook, you may want to look through there and see if they're part of the sports clubs or they've written an article. Those magazines also congratulate people when they get married or they have children or they are retiring. We also have theatre records, so professional and amateur. So if you had an ancestor with an interest in theatre, you may want to look at those collections. There are other association records sort of to do with hobbies and sports, such as cricket and cycling, which are can be useful. And also to mention again that we do take in records all the time. So a fortnight ago, the Rutland Morris deposited their collection of photographs They are available currently on their website for ease of access, but the photographs are now part of the permanent deposits at the County Record Office, so they will still be available in centuries to come. Also, not always overly useful for the genealogist, but interesting nonetheless, is that Leicester has the best selection of medieval charters outside London. They're with the borough records, obviously, due to the history of the city, but they are available on microfilm in Search Room 1, and occasionally the originals are produced for the public to enjoy. So I think I'm to time. I'm going to stop sharing now and conclude my talk.
We now move over to the Historic Towns Trust.
Hello, I'm Rowie Sweet, and I'm at the University of Leicester in the Centre for Urban History, and I'm also a trustee of the Historic Towns Trust. And in this short presentation, I'd like to explain what we do and how our approach might be of interest and value to genealogy and family history communities in this region. So I'm afraid I'm not going to be telling you about lots of undiscovered sources that you don't know about, but I hope you'll find what we do interesting nonetheless. So the Historic Towns Trust is a charity, and it's run by volunteer trustees like myself, combination of academics and other occupations. We're not all at universities. The motto, mapping our shared history, one town at a time, sums up our mission to widen understanding and appreciation of the history and topography of our towns and cities. We do this by producing historical maps and sorry, it's showing the why. Oh, yeah, that's the one. So we do this. Why it won't stay on the right? Doesn't want to stay on this slide for some reason. Well, it wants to show you where we've mapped anyway. Sorry, and we do this by producing maps and atlases of British towns and cities. And you can see here the distribution of the towns that we've covered. In actual fact, that map needs to be updated because we just published a map on Ipswich, so that's not appeared there. And we do a combination of maps and atlases. You may be familiar with these. The atlases have been published since the 1960s, and the maps are much more recent. They've been in the last 10 years or so, and I'll be going into those in more detail in a minute. So we produce these in partnership with local historians, geographers, and archaeologists, and we undertake educational and outreach activities. For example, we develop teaching materials for schools, and we contribute to events like this, aiming to show how historical maps can help us all to understand and value the urban past and potentially improve the present. And our publications are used by individuals, in schools and universities, and by community groups. So just as family history contributes to a broader understanding of society in the past, making and using historical maps can help us to see how history shapes our environment and how the environment shapes those who inhabit it. Histories of people and histories of place go together and illuminate each other. Our maps allow us to put people back in the places which they would have inhabited. So far, we've covered over 30 towns and cities, and we have at least half a dozen more in development. And this is, of course, only a fraction of all the historic towns and cities in Britain, but it's a start. And given the huge importance of migration and population movement in the history of Britain, wherever you live now, one or more of these may well have played a part in your wider family history. So initially, our work concentrated on atlases, and We haven't actually covered Leicester, but Nottingham, not so far away. We produced an atlas of Nottingham. This was one of the ones produced quite a long time ago, I think Nottingham was in the 1960s. And we don't have the map to go with it. But we have more recently covered Coventry. And I'll be using Coventry as an example to talk about today, to show the richness of historical mapping and to suggest how our practice can be extended to other places you might be interested in. For example, Leicester, because one of the things that I'm trying to do as director of the Centre for Urban History at Leicester is get support and generate interest in a map of Leicester. I've got a little bit of finance. I need to raise more money and I need to get more people involved, but there's already a lot of support within the university for producing one of these maps. So to talk about our maps, for all our maps, we use a common base of a scale of 1 to 25,000 using an Ordnance Survey base map. And this is to make sure that our maps are comparable, that this is a key element, not just of our maps, but our atlases, because we are actually part of a wider European movement as well. And so there's the comparability between UK cities and Europe, as well as within the UK. And we use a similar range of cartographic conventions so that the development of one place can be easily compared with that of others to promote understanding of their history. Typically, we show past and present on the maps together, because this is, after all, the way in which we experience towns and cities today. The modern scene includes surviving buildings, ancient street lines, historic place names, and commemorations of past events and people. So here we have an extract from the Coventry map that shows the core with St. Michael's, Holy Trinity, and St. Mary's Hall, but also shows more recent structures like the Triumph Cycle Works. And this is Coventry, really circa 1913. None of our maps actually show the 21st century. They all stop at some point in the 20th century. And for Coventry, it's 1913. So the bicycle and the motor works are all there. And here we can see, as I say, 20th century. These are two extracts showing again, more bicycle works and the motor cars in the expanded 19th and 20th century Coventry. So we normally take an Ordnance Survey map from the late 19th or early 20th century. And so for Leicester, for example, we'll be going to the Ordnance Survey map of 1888, probably. We may use one of the early 20th century revisions, because we believe it's important to use a map that predates modern developments and shows the underlying historic layout. This helps the viewer and user to relate what's now visible to what was once there. Once the map has been digitized to form the base map, we add the historical features, including some that have disappeared. And this large scale, as we saw before, it enables us to show in detail the major buildings where they disappeared. So here we can see how the cathedral and Priory Church have been, where it's cross-hatched, that's where it's disappeared. So you can see where they originally were, how the Triumph Cycle Works encroach on the original site of the Priory. And here we see how the topographical features are represented. We can see the River Sherborne, the way, of course, it runs through the city. And we can also see the line of the 15th century city wall and the way in which that has shaped some of the topography of the city, even though it no longer exists. We have we have a key or legend to explain what all the different symbols and colours mean. So here we see the Coventry map, and because the legend's really small, I've given you a blown up example. My apologies. I thought I had a slide of a blown up slide of the legend for the Coventry map, but I didn't. So this is from one of our other maps, Alnwick and Alnmouth. But you can see that the buildings are shaded in different colours to indicate their age, whether they're still standing, different colours to indicate their function. And then we also have extracts on the back. This PowerPoint has got a mind of its own. We also have a gazetteer on the back, as you can see here, for Alnwick and Alnmouth, which describes in more detail particular buildings and provides illustrations. And so for Coventry, we can see how have a section on clock and watchmaking in Coventry, which sits alongside the representation of the Williamson and Errington watch factory, for example. And so you can use the street directory and gazetteer, which is keyed to the map, to find addresses and located buildings, events, and activities from the past. And typically we have a range of a street directory, a range of images, extracts from the historic maps, and thematic boxes like this one on watchmaking. So it's, if you like, these maps are a way of representing the history of any place just on one sheet. You can trace it from, well, Coventry doesn't have Roman origins, but from Leicester it would be from the Roman street plan and the sites like Jewellery Wall through to the 20th century, and you can chart its historical evolution through the map and find out more information about the notable places, notable events on the back. And they're very reasonably priced. So if anyone's interested in these maps, and there's a full list available on our website where you can order them, I do hope you'll feel inspired to go and make a purchase. But what we're more interested in, I think, today is probably the Leicester map and how we might go about developing, researching and plotting the information for the Leicester map. And all our maps, as I mentioned earlier, are the result of collaborations. And here we have the team working on the map of Ripon, and this is what we will be hoping to do for Leicester, involve a lot of different interested parties in generating the material, deciding what should go in for the map for Leicester. The Trust offers editorial and cartographic expertise. This is in the blue jumper is our cartographer, Giles Darks, and we coordinate the production and distribution of the map. But most of the work is done by local groups, local history groups on the ground. Their knowledge and research contribute the information to be mapped, and they help to lead the fundraising for the map and the atlas, as well as planning ways in which it might be used, for example, in local schools. And to this end, I will be organising a meeting for potentially interested partners for the development of a map and an atlas later this summer. But in the moment, I'm in the middle of marking and can't think about things like that. And to make the maps, we draw on a wide range of sources. We get the base map from the National Library of Scotland, where they have digitised all the Ordnance Survey maps. When the British Library isn't being subject to cybersecurity, we use maps from the British Library and other content, but sadly that's difficult. If you're interested in finding more about the various town maps that exist, the Institute of Historical Research has a very good, useful catalogue of town maps. And for images, where the images that we use to illustrate the reverse, the British Museum research collection is an excellent source. Obviously, there are many other places you can go to, but the British Museum is digitising so much of its collection now. So everywhere, I'm sure many of you will be aware of these sources, but there's a huge amount of material out there that can be used to reconstruct the history of these towns. The actual process, if you're interested in the turning information into cartography, we have a video on our website, which you can actually look at, led by Giles, showing you how that's done. And this is our website. So for more information about the Trust, what we've achieved so far and what we hope to achieve, please do visit our website. There's more information there about what's involved and how our partnerships work. And several of our earlier publications are available to download for free, and you can buy the more recent ones from our online shop. We also post the latest news on the website and social media, and you can sign up for our newsletter. So do get in touch, either with the Trust or with me, and thank you for listening.
Right. And for our last speaker before questions and answer is Paula on the Vision of Britain. Over to you.
Thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to talk to you a little bit about our website, A Vision of Britain Through Time. Now, it's a local history website, so it's not about individuals, it's not about people, it's not about buildings, it's not even about streets, it's about places. And the idea is that it gives you a little bit of information about the place that your ancestor lived in the past. Helping you to understand what it's like. And you can do that through the old maps we have, the descriptions of the past and the statistics. And it's very simple to use. You start by entering a place name or a postcode. So this is the main website, the front page at the moment. And you enter a place name or a postcode into the search box on the left. So there. I'm going to use an example today from Rutland. I'm going to look for Uppingham. So I've typed Uppingham into the home page. It then suggests that there are 2 in Great Britain, and I'm interested in the one in Rutland. If you weren't quite sure which one you're interested in, and there were multiple places with the same name, the outline map on the right should give you some indication of which one might be the one you're interested in. So I've selected Rutland, the Uppingham Rutland, and this takes me to the place homepage. So the idea is that this gives you some information immediately about the place that you are interested in. You have an outline map on the right that shows you a rough location. There's an excerpt from a historical map on the left, and underneath is a description from a historical gazetteer. This is the Imperial Gazetteer from the late 19th century. So if I want to expand that and read the entire entry, I can click on the link and it will expand in the page, and you can read all about Uppingham at that point. So having done that, I might think, oh, what else can I read about Uppingham? And in the left-hand menu, there is a historical places and writing link, and you click on that and it takes you to the page about where we collect all the information about the writings on the place we're interested in. So at the top, we have another entry from a descriptive gazetteer. This is also a late 19th century Bartholomew's gazetteer. And underneath, we have a list of all the travellers that we have in our collection who have referenced the place that we're interested in. So, and they're ranked in order of the number of times they reference the place. So at the top, you see we have Arthur Young, and he references Uppingham 4 times. So if I click on the link for Arthur Young, it takes me straight to his first reference to Uppingham. Arthur Young was a late 18th century writer. He travelled around. He was very interested in agricultural improvements and practices, and he wrote a lot about it. He travelled all over England and Wales. He travelled around Ireland, and we have a lot of his writings in our site. So the blue dots on the map represent the places that he references in this particular entry. So you see that it goes from Birmingham to Suffolk. It's just that at this particular point, he's talking about Rutland and he's talking about Uppingham. So once you've read about what people might have written in the past, you might go back to the place page and you might think, oh, I'd like to look at some historical maps. So if you click on the excerpt of the historical map at the top, it will take you into our map collection. Now, we don't have really detailed maps. They are sort of area maps. We don't go down to street level. But what you can do is the map window will be centred on the place that you're interested in. So Uppingham is in the middle of the map window, as you can see. And And underneath is a list of all the maps we have that most closely match the scale of the map in the map window. Now, within the map window, you can zoom and pan the map, and as you do that, the list underneath will update. So once you've found a map that you would like to look at more closely, if you click on the thumbnail in the link in the list at the bottom, it will open in a new window for you, and you can see the entirety of the original map sheet. So I've picked one at random. This is from 1924, and it shows the parish of Rutland. Excuse me. So and most of our maps are this kind of scale. We have them from the earliest ones are mid-19th century through until mid-20th century. So not a massive range of dates, but there's some there to give you some idea of the change in the area. So going back to the place page again, we also have related websites on the left. So this is where we have a link directly to other websites. So if you, in this case, there are 3 example websites: GeoNames, Wikipedia, and History of the Workhouse. If you click on one of those links, it will take you directly to the page about the place you're interested in this case, Uppingham, and the information they have about the place. You'll see that there's a second tab called Locations Nearby. This has slightly more generalized information in it. So it's websites that also cover Uppingham, but slightly more generalized. So you've got more mapping sites: National Library of Scotland, OpenStreetMap, wider range of GeoNames places, and Geographer showing photographs by people. So going back to the place page for Uppingham again, the final thing that I'm going to talk about today is statistics. So we have them in 2 ways. Firstly, at the bottom of the page, we have Uppingham through time. Now, if you click on this, this takes you to the modern unitary authority of Rutland. This is what Uppingham is currently within. Now, when I say this covers a range of data, and it extends it right back as far as we can go with census data through into the modern period. At the moment, that goes into 2011. We are currently in the process of updating it, and within the next month, hopefully, we should have 2021-22 census data being incorporated into the website. But for today, it's 2011. So you can select from a number of themes to see what statistics we have. Today, I've just picked at random housing. So mostly housing is the questions on the census have been asked about since the mid-20th century, I'm sorry. So these are the options that it gives you if you go to the housing. And I'm just going to pick total households at the bottom, and it gives you the figures for the total households from 1951 through to 2011. Now, obviously, the modern unitary authority of Rutland did not exist prior to its inception in 1974. So you might be more interested in the units, the statistics for the units that existed at the time. So this link on the left, take units and statistics, takes you through to the list of historical units that have existed. And we do it this way so that you can get information about how a place has changed, but you can also access the original data. As you can see, at the moment, it's in a grid format, and you can select the units that are most interesting to you. So I'm actually going to take you to the housing information, total household information for Uppingham. At the bottom, you have the registration district. Now you'll see that that has 2,400 in 1901 and 1911. At the top, you have the rural district, which has data from 1911 through to 1961. Now you'll see that the number of households in the earlier area, registration district, is much higher, sorry, than the rural district. That's because the area of the registration district was much bigger than the rural district, which came later. The registration district went down as far as Medbourne and Great Eastern, whereas the rural district only extends as far as Caldecott and Wardley. And this is because, as somebody's mentioned in the chat, boundaries change a lot over time. So this is how we try and cover this discrepancy. We have lots of other statistical information, lots of census information. We have agricultural census information, information from the Register General's annual reviews. And that's all for me today. Thank you.
Welcome to questions and answers.
Thank you, Malcolm. A lot of the questions, we've had quite a few, have already been answered by the relevant speaker in the chat. So everyone's seen them. Deborah asked, and Laura did answer this question, but I don't know whether Sue wants to answer as well. Do your CDs include Castle Donington marriages and baptisms? Have a number of ancestors that were there, but apparently the church has retained the original registers. And all the record office, we are able to borrow a copy of the microfiche in 1966. There seems to be a significant cap on Find My Past. So I don't know.
I did try to answer that, but it came up with Deborah King isn't on the meeting, which seems slightly confusing. I think somebody, it might have been Deborah, did inquire some time ago about Castle Donington records, and it's a bit of a grey area. I would need to investigate, but Laura looks like she knows a bit more.
Yes, they came in a few weeks ago, whereas they hadn't been deposited at the record office before. They were just loaned for filming and what have you. The collection has now come in, so there shouldn't be any gaps. It hasn't been catalogued in full. It literally came through the door 3 weeks ago. So if there are gaps, it's because registers hadn't survived. But what has survived and was held by the church is now at the record office. And obviously over time there will be indexes, etc., to the full collection. But at the moment it is just you have to order up and view the originals. But if anyone wants us to sort of check, you know, have you got marriages between this date and that date, do send an email in and we'll confirm so you don't have a wasted visit. Does that help?
Do you know, Laura, do you know when they will be digitalised?
No, because as I sort of alluded to in my talk, Find My Past, etc., do huge swathes of records, huge lots, not one parish at a time. So, you know, it probably will be eventually, but I couldn't say when. And also, you've got to negotiate the legal contracts with the city, the county, and Rutland, and Find My Past, who are a business. So it doesn't happen quickly, although it probably will happen eventually. If you're waiting for Castle Donington, and it's a particular bit of time you're missing, do email in and we'll clarify if we have marriages, baptisms and deaths for that date. But if we haven't got them, then I think it's safe to assume they haven't survived, if that helps.
Okay, For the benefit of anyone who didn't read the answers in the chat and for the recording, I'm going to read the questions out that were already answered in the chat as well, so we can get brief answers for them. So this is for Else. Can PDF items be accessed remotely, i.e. from Canada, or do you have to attend in person?
Yes, I'm afraid at the moment, those items which have been scanned, such as registers and monumental inscriptions, scanned so we can conserve space on the shelves, can only be viewed at Wharf Road. But those where we have copyright because they were transcribed by our volunteers, for example, means that we will put them up on SOG Explore in due course. And now that SOG Explore is working much better, I can imagine that happening much quicker.
Okay, for Else again. My third time's great-grandfather's baptism in 1786 in Ryle in Rutland is from St John's Church, Northamptonshire, not Leicestershire. Did counties change at some point? But this may be covered later in the talk, which we have, but obviously.
Yeah, we absolutely saw that county boundaries can change. At the Society, we're quite traditional in that we arrange our records and cataloguing in the old counties as they were prior to the 1974 county boundary changes, which is the one that really particularly did lots of problems for Rutland and did away with it for some time. But in our library, it's always been there. So yeah, there are reference works which can give you the idea of which jurisdiction is relevant for the time when your ancestors were living there.
Okay, Else again. Roughly, what proportion of your records would you say are not otherwise available online versus via the main page for websites such as Ancestry, Find My Past, Google Books, etc.?
It's difficult to think of percentages, and there is definitely an overlap between them all, whether it's a transcription in our library done, for example, by a local expert, an antiquarian, say Arthur Oldacre has done lots of transcriptions of Leicestershire records for us, which may differ from the transcriptions done by Leicester Family History Society, which in turn may differ from the transcriptions and indexes done on the genealogy websites. So while notionally there's an overlap, there can be quite differences even in the basic records, let alone some of the more unusual ones. So I'm not worried if there's records on which seem to have an overlapping coverage. If you find them on one, that's great. If you don't find them on another, then you might want to see, well, how else are they covered?
Right, a question for Sue this time. Do you have records of households in stately homes or manors showing not only the names of the staff, but records of their time there?
Well, no, we don't really. I mean, estate records are notoriously difficult, to be quite honest, to access sometimes. It's often the very largest country houses who have an archivist who've retained records. But unless somebody has written something up in a local history book, unlikely. I will have a look into it. I can't remember. It wasn't a specific thing, I don't think. But it is a difficult area, to be quite honest.
Laura, did you have something to?
Yes, if that's okay. There is a full list. Sue's quite right. The Record Office has a lot of estate collections for Leicestershire and and Rutland. A lot of the family estate collections are held at the Record Office, but you generally do have to visit to look at them. They're not sort of digitised or indexed or available online. There are some quite big exceptions. We don't have the records of Beaver Hall. They're still there and they have their own archivist. There's a few estate collections in Northamptonshire especially where they have their own archivist rather than depositing at a county record office. But you can always send us an email, and if we don't hold the collection, we'll tell you where it is. Or you can look on the National Archives website on a database called Discovery, and it'll tell you where the records are held. So, and then you can email the relevant place. So yeah, some estate families have their own archivists, but a lot are in various record offices up and down the country. And sometimes they're not where you think they're going to be. There are records to do with Balham, South London, in Chester Record Office, because the Earl of Derby's main estate is in Chester, Cheshire, so all his collections are there. So, and like I was saying in my presentation, in the Herrick and Exton collections, they have records from outside the county because their families owned estates outside the county. So it can be complicated, but have a look on Discovery or email the record office if that helps. But you will have to visit. They haven't been scanned and put online, and that's the case up and down the country.
The next question is for Sue and Laura. Do you have records for Wotton Lodge at Long Wotton?
Do you know, I don't know. Bear with me while I get our catalogue open. I imagine we do, but you might want to drop us an email. I'll see if while we're talking I can get our collections catalogue up and tell you.
Sue, you're muted.
I've had a look. I can't immediately see anything, to be quite honest. But again, I've offered to have a look when I'm next at the research centre this week.
There's bits and pieces, but we probably need to have a more thorough look for that one. Sorry, can't tell you off the top of my head.
Okay, well, this is another question for you, Laura.
Okay.
Does the Record Office hold any records, especially registers or admissions, from the County Industrial School at Desford?
Yes, it does. But industrial school records, indeed any school records or records related to looked after children in any way, are generally closed for, well, adoption and care records are closed for 110 years, and industrial school records are generally, I think the phrase we use is not made available for general access. But if it relates to your ancestor, email us and we will see if we can provide access. But obviously, due to the sensitive nature of the collection, if it's in the 20th century, if it's before the 20th century, then it's you can probably just come in and view it. But if it's if it's 20th century, do send an email before visiting. Does that make sense? Was that a bit waffly?
Makes sense, thanks. And Rowie, how can we justify a Leicester City historical map? Have many of your other towns excellent value?
Well, I'm so glad that you think they're excellent value. As I said in the chat, the Trust does employ a part-time fundraiser who helps us with writing funding applications to various funders. I have managed to get some money out of the Centre for Regional and Local History here at Leicester, and some from the Leicester Archaeological and Historical Society. Hurrah, thank you very much to them. So we have enough to pay for the digitisation of the base map. But it's the next stages and developing the educational and outreach elements that we need to start raising funding for. So I'll be holding a meeting, as I said, later in the summer to try and get interested parties together and be identifying further sources of funding and writing applications. And I think events like this, which demonstrate the amount of interest and support, is very important. That if we show that we're meeting a need and that there's wider interest, then that will help. And I'm afraid I'm going to have to leave in a minute because I've got another meeting at 4. So, but I suspect there aren't any other questions.
That was your question. Yeah, so you're fine. The next one's for Paula. Would you ever consider expanding the information on administrative units to include broader ecclesiastical coverage, such as diocese, archdeacon? I can never say that word.
Archdeaconries.
That's it.
So we don't have any statistics relating to ecclesiastical units. What is true is that most of the ecclesiastical units are in our gazetteer, so they are linked. We have provinces, dioceses, archdeaconries, royal deaneries that are linked. What is not linked to the royal deaneries is the ecclesiastical parishes. They are just linked to the civil parish, ancient parishes that they were associated with, and the ancient counties. Our current funding is to work on constituencies. So we haven't got any plans to do anything ecclesiastical at the moment.
Okay, and the final question's for Laura. Are there any state collections for Tickencote Hall?
Bear with me. Sorry. I'll do a quick search.
And maybe Sue might have an answer to that as well. You've muted again, Sue.
Probably more likely to be something with the record office, to be quite honest, that kind of record. You don't have the facts at your fingertips, Laura, on all these.
Well, you know, I've only been here for 3 years. Ask me a question on London. I was there for 18. I can find out. And there is a guide to estate collections down in the search room, which I don't have at my fingertips, I'm afraid. But John Reed, if you let me know your email address or whatever, I'll tell you. I don't know what family that was, Tickencote Hall. Do you know the family name at all? Type it in if you do. Doesn't matter. I'll find out for you. My apologies that I don't know off the top of my head.
Margaret's just put in Winfield.
Winfield.
Yes, I'm not sure if that's the family name.
There's a lot for Winfield, whether it's the right records or not. I shall find out. I need to know which family it is, really.
John and Margaret have both agreed that that's the family name for Tickencote Hall.
Okay. There are bits and pieces. They're obviously mentioned in the quarter sessions. There are lease and releases. Let me just do a thing on the tree. It seems to be part of the Herrick family. There's information. No, there's lands called Winfield, which therefore might be the name of the lands, not the actual collection. There seems to be stuff in the Halford family of Wistow Hall, but again, it might be just a mention of a trade or an agreement with the Winfields. They might not be totally connected. I shall make a note of that and let you know. I'll go and get the guide from downstairs. If I'd have known there'd be questions, I'd have had a copy on my desk.
And that's it for all the questions that are in the chat. So back to you, Malcolm.
Thank you to all our speakers for answering off the cuff. It reminds me of the fact, like, who do you think you are? You can't just turn up and expect a senior archivist to be just inside the door with a bookmark in the right page of the volume. Thank you all for this. I will stop the recording and